Trauma is not simply an event that once wounded you. It is the echo that still moves through your nervous system when the world grows quiet. Many believe that healing means forgetting, that if the memory fades, the pain will dissolve. But the soul does not operate through erasure. It operates through remembrance. What is not remembered consciously will return unconsciously until it is seen in full daylight. I have watched countless people attempt to heal through control. They manage symptoms, build routines, repeat affirmations, analyze endlessly, yet the same despair returns, sometimes years later, in a new disguise. That is because control is the ego's method, not the psyche's. The psyche heals through integration, never through domination. The first error in trauma work is confusion between insight and transformation. You may know the story of your wound, recite every detail, name every villain. Still, the body trembles. Still, the same fear awakens when love draws near. This is because knowledge alone does not metabolize pain. Feeling does, until the emotion that was once frozen is allowed to complete its movement. The psyche remains divided between the one who remembers and the one who resists remembering. When I speak of division, I speak of a psychic fact. At the moment of unbearable pain, the personality fractures. One part carries on, performs, survives. Another part hides, locked away with the terror, the shame, the helplessness. Healing is the reunion of these two. Yet most people make healing another performance of avoidance. They wish to return to normal instead of becoming whole. To become whole, one must descend. There is no ascent that is not first a descent into what has been denied. The modern spirit wants only elevation, light, transcendence. But the unconscious is earthy. It demands that you feel the mud between your fingers, the heaviness in your chest, the sorrow in your bones. To rise without descent is to inflate. Inflation is not enlightenment. It is spiritual arrogance wearing the mask of peace. Many mistake emotional numbness for maturity. They call it calm. But numbness is not calm. It is distance. It is the soul holding its breath. True calm arrives only when you have exhaled every unspoken cry. I have said before that what we resist persists. Trauma illustrates this perfectly. Every unacknowledged wound continues to create circumstances that mirror its shape. A person abandoned in childhood will unconsciously seek the same absence again, hoping to master it. A person humiliated will repeatedly attract the critic until the buried shame is faced within. These repetitions are not punishments. They are invitations from the unconscious, calling for completion. If you keep doing healing as self-improvement, you are doing it wrong. Healing is not the polishing of the ego. It is the dissolution of the false image that you built to survive. That image must crack for the authentic self to breathe again. Many fear this collapse because it feels like death. In a sense, it is. It is the death of pretense. The second great mistake is to pathologize the body's wisdom. People come saying, My anxiety is back. My nightmares have returned. But the symptom is not the enemy. It is communication. The trembling hands, the sudden tears, the recurring dream. These are the language of the soul. When you silence them with distraction or denial, you silence your own guide. The body carries the memory that words could not hold. When you approach it with curiosity rather than fear, it begins to release what was frozen. Sometimes this happens through breath, through trembling, through grief that arrives like a storm. Let it move. You are not falling apart. You are falling back together. Another misunderstanding. People believe they must revisit the traumatic scene in vivid detail to heal. That is unnecessary. The psyche is not impressed by reenactment. It seeks recognition, not repetition. You do not need to relive the terror. You need to welcome the part of you that lived through it and was never embraced. When that part finally feels seen, the nervous system relaxes. Safety returns, not as an idea, but as a bodily truth. The heart begins to trust its own rhythm again. I have observed a culture that worships positivity. It tells the wounded to move on, to be grateful, to forgive. But premature positivity is another defense. Light that denies darkness blinds rather than illuminates. The psyche heals only when the light of consciousness meets the darkness of experience with respect, not superiority. Forgiveness that ignores anger is false. Forgiveness that bypasses grief is fragile. You cannot skip these steps without losing depth. To truly forgive is to acknowledge what happened, to feel every consequence, and then to release the grip of vengeance. That release cannot be forced. It ripens naturally when the heart has been allowed to ache fully. The third mistake lies in isolation. Trauma often convinces you that you are safest alone. But the original wound was often relational. Someone failed to see you, failed to protect you, or used you. Because the wound occurred in relationship, healing must also occur in relationship. Not with everyone, but with one safe presence who can hold you as you touch the pain you once faced alone. In that shared field, the nervous system learns a new pattern. What was once unbearable becomes bearable. To be witnessed is not weakness. It is the way the soul remembers belonging. The ego hates dependence, but the psyche thrives on connection. When another holds your truth without judgment, the exile inside begins to trust life again. That trust is the beginning of freedom. People ask me, when will I finally be healed? There is no finality. The psyche is an unfolding mystery, not a machine. Healing happens in layers. You peel away defense after defense, illusion after illusion. Each revelation brings more authenticity and, paradoxically, more humility. For the closer you come to wholeness, the less you cling to certainty. Do not measure healing by how happy you are. Measure it by how honestly you can meet your sadness. The capacity to suffer consciously is the foundation of true strength. When you can sit with pain without fleeing into distraction, the wound loses its tyranny. You begin to live from presence rather than protection. In analysis, I have seen transformations that did not begin with hope, but with honesty. When a person finally says, "I'm tired of pretending," the unconscious stirs. It senses readiness. From that moment, symbols begin to arise. Dreams, synchronicities, inner images. The psyche participates in healing when it feels your sincerity. There is also the temptation to idealize the therapist or the method. But no healer can rescue you from what you refuse to confront. The analyst is a mirror, not a savior. The work is done not by advice, but by awareness. You must become the observer of your own inner landscape, seeing where fear speaks, where love hides, where the child still waits. Trauma isolates you from instinct. It teaches you to mistrust the body's signals, to doubt intuition, to suppress desire. But instinct is the compass of the unconscious. When you reconnect with it, guidance returns. You start to know when to rest, when to act, whom to trust, when to stay silent. Healing is the restoration of this inner authority. Some ask why the psyche allows trauma at all. Why should suffering exist? The answer cannot satisfy the intellect, but it nourishes the soul. Through suffering, consciousness expands. Pain breaks the shell of superficial living and forces awareness inward. Without it, many would never question the masks they wear. I do not glorify trauma, but I acknowledge its paradoxical purpose. It is often the wound that awakens the healer within. Still, there is a danger in identifying with the wounded role. To keep telling your story as proof of your identity keeps you bound to the past. There comes a time when the story must be released, not denied, but reshelved as part of your library of experience. The soul wishes to evolve, not to dwell forever in one chapter. When you stop doing healing as performance, when you stop chasing completion, the work deepens. You start to listen differently. Silence becomes fertile. Tears become teachers. Anger becomes protection rather than poison. You begin to sense that beneath every pain lies a movement toward life. Trauma interrupts that movement, freezing energy that once wanted to express love, creativity, or trust. Healing melts the ice so that the original impulse can flow again. That is why recovered people often discover new talents, new sensitivity, even new faith. What was trapped becomes available. The wound becomes a doorway to vitality. You must, however, stop seeking healing as a way to avoid responsibility. Many hide behind their pain to excuse their inertia. The past shaped you, but it does not absolve you from shaping the present. The mature psyche holds both truths, compassion for the child, and accountability for the adult. Real freedom includes responsibility. There will be moments when you believe you have regressed. Old emotions resurface, old fears whisper. Do not despair. Regression is part of integration. The psyche revisits old layers when new strength is available. Each cycle deepens embodiment. At last, you will realize that healing was never about becoming perfect. It was about remembering your humanity. To be human is to carry scars. The goal is not to erase them, but to understand what they signify. A scar is not a flaw. It is the evidence that something once hurt and has since closed with wisdom. If you stop doing healing as an escape and begin to do it as an act of truth, the entire orientation changes. Instead of asking, "How do I get rid of this pain?" you ask, "What does this pain reveal about my forgotten self?" That single shift turns suffering into teacher. Eventually, you will sense gratitude, not for the violation or the loss, but for the capacity that was forged in surviving them. Through the fire of trauma, the psyche discovers its resilience, its imagination, its longing for meaning. You begin to see that what tried to destroy you also introduced you to depths of compassion you never knew before. This is why I say trauma is not the end of life, but the beginning of consciousness. It cracks the ego's illusion of control and opens the heart to the mystery of existence. From that crack, light enters, not to erase the dark, but to reveal its pattern. When you understand this, the need to heal perfectly dissolves. You live more gently with your own soul. You allow the scar to coexist with joy. You realize that wholeness is not the absence of pain, but the presence of truth. Trauma cannot be undone, but it can be transformed. And transformation begins when you stop treating the wound as a problem and start treating it as a passage. Step into that passage with courage. Do not rush. Do not cling to ideals of completion. Let every tear, every tremor, every silence become part of the ritual of return. Because what you are returning to is not the old self. You are returning to life itself, to the pulse beneath memory, to the breath beneath fear, to the quiet knowing that you have always been more than what happened to you. The psyche does not ask that you forget. It asks that you remember rightly, that you see the wound not as curse, but as calling. When you do this, the trauma no longer defines you. It refines you. And that is the true end of suffering. Not its disappearance, but its integration into the whole fabric of your being.